All right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're having a conversation on the hits and misses of the Mashujaa Day speech by the president. Also, the vetting is supposed to be continuing this morning in Parliament. It's supposed to kick in at around 8 a.m., I believe. There are another 5 is being vetted. 15 have so far been vetted. But before that, let's take a look at the feedback and what you're saying online. Let's bring that up on the screen and see. At Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya, use the hashtag Daybreak. That's how you can reach us. You can also text in 22422. There's SMS line. Tell us your name and where you're texting from. Bobo Tieno says, on a scale of out of 10, I give President William Ruto's maiden speech during Mashujaa Day 8 out of 10. He did extremely well considering hardships we are going through as a nation. Okay. Amaganga Mustaf says, extrajudicial killings and Hustler Fund touch the common mwananchi. It's a way of rebranding Kenya in the context of our safety and economic freedom, respectively. Okay. Godi Baraza says, during Mashujaa Day celebrations, the president pledged to disband the DCI Special Services Unit and form an inquest into the unit's activities. This is a step towards healing and totally uniting the broken nation. The Hustler Fund is another good piece of good news. Okay. Senator, what are your thoughts on the Hustler Fund? By the way? He said it's going to be operational next month. One of the promises he made during his campaign.
From the private sector where I come from, we always say that cash is king. Having money anytime is a good thing. And I can assure you that if the government can avail more money to hustlers to do business and to hustlers to be able to, access quick capital to start building their own business is a good thing. However, the approach and the systems around access to Hustler Fund is what I would indict, which is extremely critical, Trevor. Because number one, today you must know that our government borrows more in this economy than the typical businesses, and borrows at a higher percent of money, because you have to question the president and the government, where are they going to get the money? Currently, our government is borrowing more for any functions that it promises to do. And it borrows in the market at about 14%. The Hustler Fund and other loans that the government intends to give is put at around 10%, which is economically not practical. I would want to know how this is going to be practical. And also, it's also very critical that the president did say in the campaign, and this is not me saying, that the Hustler Fund was going to be a boost fund, whereby you are not going to loan it from government. We have seen in the last few weeks the president being very critical that this is going to be a loan to you from the government, and you must pay it back. I wish I'd say that during the campaign so that you prepare hustlers accordingly. But the last thing I wanted to say, Trevor, that is critical to me is that before the roll of the rollout of the Hustler Fund, which the president has put in the next 1.5 months, I think, because it's coming on December 1st.
December 1st, yeah.
Yeah, December 1st. It's very critical for the president to spend time, and the people are going to be in the Hustler Funds, fund disbursement, to spend time and look at where do the hustlers borrow money to spend. In my view, after working as a fintech expert in the private sector, the Hustler Fund, the hustlers borrow money, predominantly to consume. Okay, they have got serious basic need problems that they borrow money to consume on. And I'm going to tell you how this one looks like in Fuliza. Then the second, the hustlers attempt to borrow money as working capital for their business. I'm saying the word attempt critically because that's where the president wants to target. And then the biggest thing, the third one, is that hustlers try to borrow money to buy simple assets that can be able to, one, help them do business, and number two, help them build a base for bigger credit. So now if you look at the area of consumption, the president talked about Fuliza the other day, after talking to Fuliza and looked at how does Fuliza come into the borrowing market with a low rate. If you look at Fuliza's borrowing, Trevor, about 68% of people are borrowing from Fuliza today are borrowing between the Kenya shillings 1 and 100. About 22% are borrowing between Kenya shillings 100 and 500. About 4% are borrowing between Kenya shillings 500 and 1,000. Then about 3% are borrowing between Kenya shillings 1,000 and 1,500. About only 1% is borrowing between 2,500 and 75,000. between 2,500 and 75,000 is where you should be seeing working capital for business. Yet you see that that's where you have this 1%. So you have to be cautionary in terms of how we roll out this Hustlers Fund to make sure that it works for the common mwananchi. And for me, the way you need to roll it out best is to structure it around assets. Because when hustlers can be able to acquire some simple assets, they can be able to borrow against those assets in the future and be able to build better businesses. Just to finish on how this looks like in the market today, my brother, look at a simple hustler as a boda boda rider in Nairobi today. For a boda boda rider in Nairobi today to get a motorbike, they need an average of about 150,000, which, number one, hustler fund cannot be able to afford them. What does that mean? It leaves them with predatory lenders in the market that they can go and get that kind of big amount of money. When they go there, they're taken advantage of. For instance, if you look at the most commonly used motorbike in Nairobi today, my brother, TVX HLX 150X model, it goes for about 150,000 in the market today. But when they go to Watu Credit or Mogo, for the first thing they're subjected to is 23,000 processing fee. Then they're told to pay 20,000 deposit. And then that is computed to now a total loan exposure of about 154,000, which then those predatory lenders exposes them to about 4.5% interest per month. What does that mean, Trevor? It means that this hustler who is a motorbike rider in Nairobi today has to pay for an asset for about 2 years, paying on interest alone to Watu Credit and Mogo around 166,000 in interest alone. By the time they're finishing to pay their motorbikes, what happens? The motorbike has depreciated. They can't sell it for even 60,000. They can't continue with business, and then the hustler is relieved of his debt with Watu, but then left with a lot of negative progression because there's no now any asset to be able to depend on. So these are the things that I think that Hustler Fund should be looking at. Where do we want to invest this Hustler Fund to honestly be able to empower the hustler?
Yeah. How best would this Hustler Fund be implemented, Mwe?
Trevor, you know, the economy of this country, to a greater extent of about 78%, is supported by the informal sector of this country. Yeah. And the businessmen who operate in this informal sector, these are people sometimes who cannot be able to get financing from the banks. And they end up, you know, contributing money from the chamas and all these other ways of getting resources of money to finance different business deals which they may get in the course of the day. Having said that, you need to tie the informal sector with the programs which the government want to roll out. And one of the programs is the housing program, which the president talked about yesterday to a bigger extent. And the number of jobs which this program is going to create in manufacturing. For instance, manufacturing of doors, manufacturing of windows, manufacturing of hinges, and many other products which will be used in this housing program. Of course, in the coming week, you'll be launching some of these programs, the housing program. If you tie that with the informal sector and you tie that with the ASRA fund, then my brother here can appreciate what this ASRA's fund will come and do. I'll give you an example so that we can be able to understand. You go to Ngong Road today, you'll find quite a number of artisans along the road who are doing bends, who are doing all manner of furniture, and they depend on the customers who come and buy one piece of chair or table or whichever is there, whichever they want. And these are people who have very good skills, who can do, you know, product in large scale. But today, if you give those artisans a job of 300 million to supply in, say, an apartment of 10, 15 stories with doors and windows and all the things which are required in that apartment, they will not be able They will not be able to supply because they don't have that kind of capital to implement that kind of job. And this is where the Hustlers Fund is coming in, is to aggregate some of these artisans together and say, you have this job worth 300 million or 400 million to do this project. And they cannot get that money from the bank. They cannot get that money from their chairmas. They cannot. Hustlers Fund is coming in to help such kind of people who are in the informal sector, who are supporting our economy to a greater extent, and they will be able to implement, to supply the furniture which is required and make money and support many, many other people who also need the support. Because, of course, you have to understand the supply of money within the economy and how it happens. So, to me, the Hustlers Fund, you don't look at it from isolation. Agriculture is a big sector in the Kenyan economy. And of course, we are saying the government is encouraging, production. And this production can only happen if we have farm inputs. If we have people who are supported by government to do different types of farming, whether it is in horticulture, whether it is farming rice or whatever it is, whether it is avocados, it's a big business at the moment in supply of avocados in China and other parts of the world. How do we support? Today you may get a job to supply avocados to an outside market, and you are a simple hustler. How do you ensure you have money to buy containers of avocados, and the entire, the supply chain will cost you, by the time these avocados get to the last, to a supermarket in China or in Poland or in different parts of this world. So Hustlers Fund is coming in to support, those people who are in informal sector, who support this economy to a greater extent, and they will end up not able to perform because they don't have enough resources.
Okay.
So I think the government is aware on challenges which they may face in terms of distribution of this fund. And he's saying about where does the government get this kind of money to give to hustlers. Let me say this. The number of pension funds from Europe and other countries which are lining up at the moment to give the government money. And remember the president said, we are going to rent this money at a single digit. So nothing to do with 14%, 10%, it must be less than 10%, okay? Probably 5, 4, around there, percent. The number of pension funds outside there who can give the government resources to structure such a fund are too many.
Okay. Let me give you a quick response, then I'll come for you to closing remarks because I have to make cabinet vetting.
And I'm not saying that is the direction. Okay. I'm only saying that the sources of fund are there.
All right, Eddie.
Yeah. So I think I just want to make clarity that I'm not against the Hustler Fund. It is something that I would want for my people as well. But I was saying that I was just wanted to understand more of what the government thinks of the sources of funds vis-a-vis the returns.
Okay.
Because the government is borrowing at a higher interest rate, like 14% in our domestic market and even higher in other syndicated markets abroad. But then then it wants to lend it at a lower, unless the government wants to be a Shylock, because that's the only way it makes economic sense, with a lot of humility. But what I wanted to say here, Trevor, is that the significant part of the Hustler Fund is that definition of what is going to do. Because, quite honestly, the president is not an outsider. The president has worked as a president, as a vice president before, for 10 years, where we did have things like the Uwezo Fund, which was launched by him together with Uhuru Kenyatta. Okay. And we saw how that Uwezo Fund was not able to help young people as much as was intended. So that's why I keep on talking about rhetorics. The intention is good, and I do appreciate the intention of the Hustler Fund. But if you do not put up a proper clarity around the strategy of disbursing it, it is going to be a waste, because, or rather, young people will not access it. Right. Either it's an invoice financing, as he says, that you give people quick money to quickly.
Uwezo Fund is an elite fund. Very elitist.
Created by both Uhuru and Ruto. It's not something that the public doesn't know.
Okay, let me bring up some of the feedback and then take closing remarks from my guests here, because we have to make way for the vetting that is about to begin anytime from now. And Roy T-Boy also has to come in on the decks for a bit. Let's squeeze in just one here. Okelo Mwalimu says this regime won't be judged on how many and how colorful pledges they give, but on how many pro-poor interventions they make. The president and his deputy must look for ways of bringing the country together. Legislators must support government in delivering on their pledges. All right, Honorable Ruko, I'll start with you. Closing remarks. Where do we go from here?
Just to respond, just briefly, that the Uwezo Fund is a very elitist way of dispersing funds to the youth and women. Of course, formalizing the way is more or less like a bank. If you look at the way Uwezo Fund operate and the way the banks operate, it's in a very elitist manner. And I don't think Asra's Fund will use the same methods. We know when we are Asra's outside here, you may have a business which you didn't have yesterday, and you need to do it quickly and make your 5,000 or 10,000, and is in a very informal manner. I'm sure when it comes to structuring the Asra's Fund, this is something which will be considered.
Okay.
For sure, that will be considered. I think yesterday, President Ruto captured the mood of the nation. We need to see the government implementing programs which are going to turn around the way of doing business, and this affects, the rise of every Kenyan, and of course generate income to each and every household, whether it's in agriculture, whether it is in different sectors of economy.
Okay.
So to me, the speech of the president yesterday was well thought, well intentioned, and if you look at the universal health care, is something which has been affecting this nation for quite some time.
All right.
And his intention is very clear to solve this problem once and for all.
Eddie, closing remarks.
My closing remark very fast is that every government is elected within the context of its contemporary challenges that it must solve at the moment. We've seen in the UK when the issues of economics, when Liz Truss was appointed a prime minister, and if she could not be able to capture the imagination of the country, and she was not able to stabilize the country in the context of those contemporary challenges, she resigned after 45 days. What does that indict? It indicts that after 45 days, you should be able to put the country under stability. And for our nation today, what I believe is critical for our government to look at is two things, Trevor. Number one is uniting this country outside the campaign mode that we have had in the last 2 years and bring the country back together. And number two is to reduce cost of living. And that cost of living, I would wish that the president and the cabinet take control of the levies in energy, take control of the levies in fuel, and reduce government borrowing that is crowding out businesses in our country, and then empower devolution. Give devolution power by giving devolution money and structures that work, so that money can go to the common person in the grassroots, instead of just thinking about rhetorics that then you might get into those long-term goals without a population. That is a population that has been wiped out by hunger, and a population that has been wiped out by emotions that have been running in these elections and divisive policies that we have faced in this country. We need a patriotic system, and I hope that our president and the deputy president and the cabinet that will be formed soon will rise up to the task to be patriots and not just competitors in politics looking for vested interests.
All right, thank you so much for making time. Honorable Eddie Okech, Senator for Migori, Honorable Geoffrey Ruku, Member of Parliament from Mbeere North. We have to make time for the vetting that is about to kick off any time from now, but we're taking a quick break. When we come back, Roy Tibo is on the decks for a short time, and then we cross over to Parliament, all right? Bye for now, and have a great weekend ahead.